11. So next up is the second project associated with the track team. Do we have any track members here? Okay. All right. Track is good. So I wish that CS professors would get as much loyalty and passion as the track coaches seem to get. So nobody's done. Wait, Travis has done something to make his CS professors' life easier. So I can't say that.
Maybe Joe.
Yeah. So this is Quade Kayle, and I'm very happy to cede the floor to him.
Hi everyone, my name is Quade, and today I'm going to be presenting my capstone, Coach Country, a real-time distance coaching application.
Push. Okay. Just get it.
So, anyways, to start off, I'm going to be going over the problem I'm trying to solve. So, to start off, we're talking about a distance team here. If you take a look at the top diagram, these are a couple of runners from Carthage's team. You have their name, their year, and the most important data point I want to go over, their weekly prescribed mileage. Next to it is their phase average, which is roughly an average of how much they've ran through that phase. This is manual. This is all manual data that has to be entered by a coach and manually modified by a runner. As you can see on the bottom diagram, that's kind of how the charts look in a different sheet. This is all done through Google Sheets. It's all manual. The left mileage is the prescribed mileage, and the right being the actual mileage that I ran for a week. So the problem I'm trying to solve is that this is not tracked automatically. A runner has to go in and automatically type in, like, yeah, I ran this amount of miles for this amount of day. I ran this much for this week. And I'm trying to make it more of an automatic problem. On top of solving this problem, there are a couple of features of an application that you can introduce on top of solving this one single issue. One of them being safety, and I'm going to be going over this in my next slide. So if you're talking about a couple of features for an application of this caliber, the first one would be the real-time tracking for safety monitoring and route data. So if we're talking about real-time tracking for safety, let's just talk about a scenario. If a runner on a team goes for a 15-mile run at roughly about 650 pace, that run is on average going to take about 2 hours. What happens if they are very far away from their home base or campus and an emergency arises? Let's say a coach needs to know exactly where the runner is at that exact moment. They need to pick them up, or they need to tell them, like, hey, you have to come back to campus, there's an issue. What if also they get kidnapped, they go missing? Maybe knowing their exact location at the time they went missing would be helpful to find them, or to maybe track them down. Maybe their app was still running at the time of the kidnapping. Another thing that having all this real-time tracking could solve would be route data. So on the first part, we want to know how long they've been running for a certain day, how many miles did they run. But with the location tracking, you could also track their pace, how long they've been running for, and then actually see an actual route for where they've been running using latitude and longitude or geopoints. Another feature that you have to consider is what possible devices or would be a feasible stack for this project. I started off by wanting to talk about doing a wearable, so like an Apple Watch, a Samsung Watch, something smart. However, this is not as easily accessible or findable for someone like a student or even just someone in general. However, everybody has a phone. Everybody has a phone that, for the most part, has data capability. That would be the most feasible and possible project device for this. And lastly, another feature you have to consider is data. Where is it stored? How is it being retrieved? And how are we going to listen real time to these changes? You have SQL, you have non-SQL databases, you have cloud-based databases, and local storage databases. Which one would be the most efficient for this project? After thinking about all these things, I've come up with my own solution. If you combine coaching, the common practice of instructing others in a talent, and cross-country, which is the common sport among distance runners, I've come up with my solution, which is called Coach Country. So to begin, I'm going to be going over the data flow overview of my project. So if you take a look, I chose Android as the stack for my project. Through Android, I've decided that I'm going to be using Firebase, like many of my other colleagues have been using it for their projects. Firebase allows for real-time tracking and real-time change listening. So if you kind of take a look right here, a runner is actively listening to changes from a coach and sending out changes to Firebase. A coach has an instance of this database that they're listening on for each of their runners. Every time a change is found on Firebase, it is updated on the coach's view. If we can go more in depth, for a runner, these are some of the features that are implemented. One of them is being able to check a coaching status. So he'll be able to look on his phone like, okay, coach is currently online. They know that I know that they're going to be looking at my run. They can also start a session. So let's say they're going for a run that day. They need to press the button on the phone to actually say, I'm going to go for a run. After they're done with their run, they can actually save their session to Firebase to be able to go back and view their past sessions. Similarly for a coach, they're able to use Firebase to view a runner's status or presence in the app. They're able to watch all the runners on a similar map that a runner has in their session view, which I will be showing in my demo. A coach can not just look at all their runners, but actually focus on a singular runner for their session. And afterwards, let's say they want to go back and see if they've been doing their mileage, if they've been entering in all their sessions, they can go back and look at all their sessions and make sure that they're doing all of them, and even see different data points like their pace, how long they actually ran for, how far they went, and actually see the actual route, like where did they run. So with this all, I'm going to be going into my demonstration. So at home on my desktop, I currently have 3 emulators running mock locations and the application itself. You can watch this as I sign up an authorization flow for a new runner for Carthage. I don't want to do that. So for this, we're going to use someone that is currently on the team, which is Trevor Tomich. And we're just going to be using Trevor's name as the password. So after actually entering in your data, you're actually able to choose which team you want to be a part of. Currently, there's only 3 teams. We have Carthage, North Central, and Wheaton, all colleges that are in our conference. For this, Trevor's going to be part of the Carthage team. He's going to be on the long-distance event group, and Trevor is a junior currently. So we're going to register him in the app, and we'll come to the home page. So I don't actually currently have any runners really holding a phone and running this app, so I'm mocking the location of the device at the current moment. So this is an app that I actually use called Mock Locations to mock the device's location for my application. So now that the user's device is being mocked, we can actually start a running session. So we go into Start Session. It'll take a couple of seconds to register them. And you can actually see on the coaching app, Trevor has been added to the grid. Now, Trevor's nowhere near the other runners that are going on a 50 to 100 mile run to Chicago. But we can find him if we click on his grid point. So we can find that Trevor is actually back towards Carthage doing a loop just around the campus. As you can see, in his blip, you can see that you have his name, the total time he's been running for, so roughly about 35 seconds, the pace that he's running at, and the current distance that he's ran. And this is both uniform between both of the applications. You can see that whatever the runner is seeing on his app is exactly being mirrored on the coaching app. Now, you're kind of seeing some stuff going on in the background. This is actually Firebase doing all of these changes real time. These are the 4 users within the actual application. And you can actually see here there's the collections for some of the other data like the coaches or the teams. And so let's find Trevor. So this is Drew. I think this is Trevor. Yes, this is Trevor. So as you can see from their live session, all this data that is being sent from here is being mirrored right here as well. And the coach is actively listening to this instance and getting these changes real time. So once Trevor is done with his workout, which he only ran for 1 minute and 30 seconds, we're going to stop, finish workout. And as you can see here, their total distance, the total time that they ran, and their average pace that they ran for is all up here. And same within here, you can see their route that they ran. So let's say Trevor doesn't know and doesn't remember this run. He wants to go back and make sure that he ran the mileage that he needed to for this day. You can press here, and you can see his previous session has been logged inside this application. If you go back here, you get back to the same exact view with the same exact data that was from their route. On the coaching standpoint, you can see that if you go right here, you can go to his runners. They load. You can go to Trevor. You can see that he's a junior. He runs long distance, and his prescribed miles for the week is 35 miles. And the same exact data that Trevor could see on his phone is now on the coach's phone as well, so he could also see what Trevor did for that day. So, that's all for my demo. So, I kind of want to talk about an ideal situation for my application. To first begin, the phone versus wearable argument. So, any runner on our distance teams can tell you most of them do not run with phones. Most of us use smartwatches, which just allow you to look at it and say your pace, how long you've been running, what's your distance, things like that. But none of this is able to be viewed by a coach. It's just for you personally. In an ideal situation, we'd want a wearable for this application, and we'd want an Apple Watch, a Samsung Watch, to just be able to send this data from the watch itself and not have to hold anything extra. Phones are bricks, they're kind of hard to carry, and they're kind of awkward too to carry when you're running, especially at a faster pace for a amateur distance runner. Secondly, in an ideal situation, we'd want this application to be platform agnostic. Currently, it's only an Android application, but I'd want to extend this application to be iOS as well, and also even be web for the coach. If a coach could just sign into the web, into this application, and just have their dashboard on a computer, they don't have to just be staring at their phone. They can actually just go on to their computer and go and watch all these changes. And lastly, more data tracking, I think, would be very helpful, especially for the coaching of a runner. If you take some of these data points, like a heartbeat, you could maybe see a trend line from certain months. Like, let's say at the beginning of a phase, they had a heartbeat during a run at around 130 beats per minute, and after 2 months of training, it's now down to 120. Maybe a coach says, okay, their heartbeat's been going down on average for their normal runs at this certain pace. Maybe we need to up their pace or up their mileage, so that we can train them better. Maybe you can track their weight as well and see a trend line for there. And also maybe even a step count to know how efficient of a runner they are. So kind of going in what I learned through this whole process would first be creating a more thorough project specification. I really found that when I was writing this, I kept coming into these forks in the road at my project spec, and I was like, I didn't write this down, and I don't know what to do. And I had to make a choice. Do I go with what I said and struggle, or do I make the change and just go a different way? But every time I went a different way, I drove further and further away from my project specification. None of this was very clearly laid out, and so I just kind of went with it. It was improv towards the end, and I mean, I'm still very happy with how it turned out, but it was difficult to develop when it came to that. Next, I think utilizing and researching more modern frameworks would have been useful. I just chose to use Android, there's certain layout manager. I didn't choose to use Kotlin, I chose Java. Kotlin is actually the brand new programming language that they've been using in the recent years. And also, you can see a lot of my components look similar between views, and I had to just copy and paste those. Those weren't just reused, they had to be copy and pasted. And something like React Native could have maybe consolidated these components to just be able to paste in components where I needed them to be, instead of having to continue to go back and forth and copy and paste them. Next, something I learned too was that the small and incremental building that we hear so much about works. It works a lot. It works very well. If you start early and go steadily, something that I hear him say a lot, it works. I found sometimes I didn't even want to open the editor. I didn't even want to look at my code. I just wanted to, not today. But I found that if I just opened the editor and I just gave it a shot, write a few lines, it didn't stop at a few lines. It went further than that. I would implement big features, and I'd be like, okay, I did that today. I'm not going to do it tomorrow. And then I'd wake up tomorrow and just like, I should probably work on it, and I just write a few lines of code. But then I continued to just keep building and building by just being consistent with my work. And lastly, focusing on the main functionality versus the fun-to-haves was initially a problem for me. As you can see, I went through the authorization flow of my application. That was something that was not necessary at the beginning, and I spent 2 months trying to make it work properly. In the end, it was a very small part of my project, and I'm very glad to have it in there, but I wish that I'd focus on more of the main functionality of the application rather than the fun-to-haves. So this kind of brings me into my reflection. There's really too many things to say, but I have a couple of things that I want to go over. So first, a bit of a reflection of myself. I didn't really know what I was capable of coming into senior thesis. I didn't know what I was capable of building. And I found that by just giving it a shot, by just telling yourself each time, like, I know it's hard, I know you can't do it, or you don't think you can do it, but if you just keep trying, it will get better, it will get easier, and you will have fun, and you will get it done. And this was something that has been a consistent thing throughout my 4 years here. I didn't know I was capable of doing this. And I'm not just talking about this, I'm talking about this. It's been 4 years that I've been here, and even coming in, I didn't know if I was capable of finishing. This brings me to my second point about myself, is that if I wanted to get anywhere, I just had to try. I love telling this story because it is the reason why I'm standing here today. I was an undecided major going into my second semester freshman year, and I just took whatever courses I need to requirement-wise, except for one, computer science. I liked computers, and I didn't know what I was doing really when it came to a major, but I liked computers, and I knew that maybe this could be it. I was in a class with Professor Kavolowitz for CS1, and he gave us a midterm, 8 questions programming, run-of-the-mill. We get our midterms back. He tells the class, so 4 of the questions out of the 8 are deemed too hard for the class, so I've decided to make them extra credit. I take a look at my exam, and I got every single question correct. And next to my score was a note from Professor Kavolowitz. I hope you intend to be a CS major. I don't think I would be standing here today, almost graduating as a computer science major, without trying. I gave it a shot. I tried to be a computer science major, and it led me to this point. And that brings me, secondly, to my experience. I tried anything and everything to get to this point, and it's very important to realize that if I didn't just decide to take that one class, I wouldn't have gotten here. If I didn't try to build a communicative Android application, I wouldn't have gotten here. I don't think I would have made it to Carthage's doorstep if I didn't try. So one of my major points I'm going to go over with my experience was that home, or the idea of home, was not very concrete all the time. I know that given a chance at Carthage and given a chance in this department, I know that I was going to make the most of my experience the 4 years that I was here. And here we are, the end. And my experience taught me that the 8 houses that I moved in and out of weren't home. I learned that my dorm room wasn't my home. I learned that even the track that I ran on is not home. And this might be a bold statement, but Carthage isn't even home. Home is the moments that I made here. And home is a moment like this. And I think I'm going to carry a moment like this and all the moments I made over my 4 years everywhere I go. And this brings me to my biggest takeaway. As you can see here, this is a collage of names. What is so significant about these names? Some of them are my parents. Some of them are my friends. Some of them are my brothers. Some of them are people who housed me when I needed it most. Some are people who fed me when I needed it most. Some of my mentors. And what's so amazing about this list is I wouldn't have home without these people. You can point to any name on that list and I will give you a specific reason why I'm here today because of them. Support means everything, and I don't think I would have it any other way. Thank you. Questions?
Questions?
I actually, because paradigms I have to cover Kotlin, I kind of want to know what your opinions are on the strengths of using it in Android Studio. I'm trying to repeat the
Can you
question.
repeat could you actually repeat the question?
Right, I want to know what you think are the strengths of implementing Kotlin in Android Studio, more like specifically for your project.
What are the strengths of implementing Kotlin for my project? I didn't do too much in-depth research into using Kotlin, so I don't know much about the language. I do know that most, at least Android and obviously Google, are pushing people towards the Kotlin programming language because it is considered the new language of the Android platform. So I guess all I can say about that is if they see potential in it, I think it's important to move towards what the new is, because I mean technology is always changing and you want to be changing with the technology, and moving on to what's being pushed could help you in the future. So that's all I have to say about that. Ben.
I don't know if you mentioned this, or maybe I just missed this, but since you are talking about using it possibly as a wearable, there are a lot of Android wearables out there.
Mhm.
So I don't know, is there any testing that you had? Maybe you could, because it's just an Android app, and you could put it on an Android wearable?
Probably. The biggest thing, the reason why I didn't was because there's not many wearables out there that can just standalone connect to a Wi-Fi tower. And in the end, they're expensive. I wanted to get an Apple Watch, but the budget isn't there, and I don't have the money myself to purchase that. So, again, I come back to my argument that everyone has a phone. Everyone can use this application, and they don't need to buy a wearable to be able to use it.
That was great, very inspiring. My question, though, is about the database portion.
Sure.
So you use Firebase, a few other people have been using Firebase. Can you talk at all about designing a Firebase database compared to, say, a relational database? Is the process, what's the process like?
So what is the process like for using a cloud-based database versus a local database or relational database like SQL?
Specifically in designing the database.
I found that you just don't need to signify the relationships as you create them. You kind of just maintain those relationships in your head and as you write. So like with SQL, obviously, if you want there to be a relation between two columns, you need to strictly specify that as you write your SQL database, whereas if you're writing something like Firebase, it's mostly you want everything to just be nested within your collection, but if there is a connection, you just need to know that there is a connection between the two. And what was very nice is the documentation, read it, was very, very helpful for, it almost, like when I was programming it, there was a lot of documentation on how to make it kind of feel like a relational database and how to write, if it's this, where this is this, it'll be very easy to make those connections without having them specified within the actual database. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so I guess, how did that feel? Did you prefer not having the explicit relationships right in your face?
I did. It felt more natural. All right, thank you.
Here, your determination and your effort, skill, and your effort.
All right.
Thank you. Appreciate that.